If you've been around for a while, you know there are few things I like to talk about less than MongoDB. And believe me, I don't want to talk about it today, but this happened. Mongo's stock jumped 40% the last day and a half. Their market cap's now $24 billion. Mongo is now a $24 billion company. For reference, that puts them at about half the size of Ford. Yeah. 2 Mongos now equals one of the biggest car company in the world by actual shipped vehicles. I have feelings. We have a lot to talk about here because on one hand, this shouldn't have happened. But on the other hand, it was kind of inevitable. There's a lot of reasons why Mongo is being valued very highly, and the important ones are their revenue. Their revenue went up 24% year over year. Their Atlas revenue in particular went up 29%, which is 74% of their total revenue. And they added 2,800 customers, which is not that big of a number until you understand how Mongo's platform works. I have a lot to talk about here. From a really awkward experience I had with the Mongo team not long ago, to the reason why they're actually getting customers and why people are choosing Mongo in the first place, to, God, and I feel sick even saying this part, the benefits of Mongo. God, sorry. I'm feeling a little sick. It's not going to be a fun one for me, but I don't own stock in Mongo. I have equity in a lot of their competitors, which means I'm in a lot of pain right now. Just roll the sponsor. We'll get back to it in a sec. Not going to lie, it kind of sucks hiring right now. There are so many people applying to every role, and they're filling their resumes with these padded blobs of AI text. Just parsing through it to try and find a good candidate is nearly impossible, especially if you don't know what exactly you're looking for just yet or how long you're going to need them for. Hiring's gotten chaotic, and you could go hire a bunch of recruiters that don't actually understand tech to try and help you find good employees. Or you can use today's sponsor, G2I. They're the only company that'll help you get good engineers fast without compromising on quality at all. They really get it. I've been hanging with these guys forever. They host my favorite React Conf, React Miami, and I don't even know how to put it. They just really understand this. I referred a few of my startup friends over to G2I, and all I have heard is the most positive stuff about how unbelievably good the candidates they find are. It's their goal to go from interview to first pull request merged in a week, and I've seen them pull this off many times. It's not marketing fluff. They can actually do it. And the coolest part about this is how flexible the people you hire can be. If you need a senior engineer for a few weeks to rebuild your mobile app, you can get that. If you need a couple of junior engineers to help you long-term, you can find them. If you need a really senior person to come in for 6 months to help you re-architect your entire infrastructure as you figure out what's going on long-term, you can get that. Whatever you need, in-person, remote, US, Europe, iOS, Android, Python, AI, whatever, they have you covered with their 8,000 experienced engineers. And these aren't people looking for their first gig. These are experienced people that they keep around ready to go for opportunities like your company. If you're ready to hire faster and better, check them out now at soydev.link/G2I. So let's get started with why the fuck is everyone using Mongo? First, in case you all don't know, what is Mongo? Other than a mistake, it is an alternative document database. I don't have the heart to explain this myself, so I will pay an AI to do it for me. Using GPT-5 Mini on low because Mongo's a low IQ choice. Oh, God, I hate this. Also, 5 Mini is an underrated model. MongoDB is a distributed, document-oriented, NoSQL database that stores data in BSON, which is a binary JSON format. Each record's a flexible, self-describing document, kind of like JSON, which can contain nested objects and arrays. Main comparison I wanted to make was DynamoDB, which is the really powerful document data space. It's technically a KV, but it is used the document store. There's also Amazon Document DB, which I never actually heard anyone using. They just use Dynamo. A way I've described Mongo in the past is Dynamo for babies. Actually, though, it's worse than that. It's databases for babies. Schemas are hard, the DB. Wait, but it actually scales a bit, the DB. It's a lot of things. The big thing with Mongo compared to SQL or other real databases is that it's a document store, which means that the shape of a given element is not predetermined by the database itself. If you have a table in SQL, it has columns that are specific values. So a user table will have a name, it will have a created at, it'll have an updated at, have an ID, might have an email, might have a lot of other things, profile, pic, URL. You get the idea. When you have a table, In most databases, the table has columns that describe the things that a given row in that table will have in it. A user collection in Mongo will have a JSON blob. They're doing their own custom JSON shit, and you can do really cool stuff with it, like index on keys and whatnot. But the point I'm trying to make here is that the elements, like the core entities in Mongo, are really flexible. And historically, that hasn't been super valuable because it's not that hard to change the schema in a database. Obviously, migrations fucking suck. I've complained about that forever. And we've also been seeing more and more funny things recently, like people using AI agents like, I don't know, Replit was a funny one. And it makes changes to the database. It tries to migrate those changes. It can't because there's a field that's mandatory that wasn't before. Like if we had a bunch of users in the user table and we didn't have ProPEC URL, and then we add it as a mandatory field, what happens to all the rows that don't have that yet? Great question. In the case of Replit, it didn't want to deal with it, so it just nuked the table. Yes, Replit was willing to just nuke an entire database, like an actual prod DB, because it couldn't migrate the changes because it had a mandatory field that wasn't mandatory before. It was a whole drama a few weeks ago. Mongo doesn't have these problems because Mongo doesn't have structure. Mongo has data in a vague sense. It just has these JSON blobs floating around. This obviously has a lot of negatives. When you get a user from Mongo, you don't know what you're getting. It should be the shape that you usually use, but it's possible you have things that were written before that shape was being enforced that are just floating around. You can do a lot to manage that and try to maintain reliable schemas within Mongo. The likelihood that you're actually doing that as a Mongo user varies wildly, but that flexibility is actually quite useful when you don't know the shape of your data yet, or you need to just shard it and scale it indefinitely. When you don't have to make sure the specific shape of the data is persisted, it's literally just a key value store, it kind of just goes burr. It's relatively easy to scale when you don't have complex relations between things, because Mongo doesn't really have relations, kind of has vague concepts resembling relations that you can use. But if I have my user table here and users have messages, I might have message IDs as an array on here. But more likely what I have is I have a separate message table, and the message table has an author ID. And now I can do a join between the message table and the user table to get the messages for a given user. That lets you in one query get the user and all of their data as well as the messages that are linked to it. Now let's say we want to scale this database. We have to shard it and break it up across many nodes. What happens if multiple of this user's messages are on multiple different nodes? Well, that query's performance just went to shit. In Mongo, everything's just kind of sharded by default. Well, depending on how you set it up, obviously. And since Mongo is obnoxious to actually set up and deploy, it is not uncommon for people to just give up and go to the MongoDB company and use Atlas, which is their cloud host for Mongo. They handle all of those things for you, similar to like what PlanetScale does to your SQL database, but you don't have to worry as much because Mongo, I want to say it's slow no matter what, but its performance is fine. It handles these things decently well. So the benefits of Mongo, oh God, I hate that statement. God, I hate this. I hate having to do this part so much, but first off, that it's very flexible, no strict schema. It scales well because it's a document store, so it's much easier to shard and break up. You'll still have the problem of if the messages get split up across different things, joining and collecting them all can be annoying because you have to get the user, get their ID, then search for all messages that match this index. Thankfully, it's smart enough that you can have an index be a shard key, so you can have all of the messages indexed on a given author go to the same place so that they can all come up from the same spot. Insert web scale joke here.
MongoDB handles web scale. You turn it on and it scales right up.
What else? Really good sales team. The sales team's really good at their jobs. They've convinced a lot of companies that aren't very technical to move everything over to Mongo. I'll say it's much easier to use than Dynamo. The only real competitor for Mongo is DynamoDB, because DynamoDB was built from the ground up to be a document store that scales really well. Mongo was built to be a database in a web era. Another alternative way of thinking of Mongo is that it was the first web database, and their branding was the first web scale database. What it actually was the realization that more and more developers don't want this strictness in their SQL, and they want something that feels more like an API that they're hitting, that will just give them the data that they put there. Also, every other SQL dialect was invented before JSON. Mongo was invented because of JSON. And that's how we ended up with the classics like the mean stack, which was Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node, as well as Mern. stack, which you can do the math. This was a whole era. And a lot of this was because Mongo suddenly meant you don't have to understand SQL really well to make a database that works. Anyone can make a database that doesn't work now. Yeah. Anyways, I promised an awkward story about Mongo. I want to tell it. So I was at a random, I don't want to be too specific about people and the space, but I really want to emphasize this like sales team part because I think it's funny. So this might sound a little arrogant, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I've just been wanting to tell the story for a while, and I'm thankful to have the opportunity. I was at a random developer event, AI-focused event, that Mongo happened to be a big sponsor of. They had a huge booth. I was walking by said booth with a friend of mine. My friend notices somebody that they recognize at Mongo and like says hi quick. And they come over, put out their hand, they're like, "Oh, who are you? Good to meet you." Totally fine. I don't expect every person at every dev company to know me. I don't expect many of people to know me, honestly, especially outside of SF. That said, 70% of developers who use AI watch my videos. It's a crazy stat that I still can't believe, but when I go to like a Y Combinator event or I go to a bar in the city, I see that in real life. There's a lot of people who recognize me. By the way, if you do see me at something and you want to get a photo, don't feel bad. Feel free to ask. I don't care. It's fine. Like meeting my fans and seeing them in person. It's cool. I'm not complaining. It's weird, but it is really cool. It's a little more annoying when I leave my apartment and get recognized down the street when I'm trying to like go grab food, but it's fine. I get it. There's something specific about what I'm doing out here. And it's another word that makes me feel sick. God, I hate typing this. DevRel. Sorry. Stomach's not feeling great after that one. For better or worse, you could categorize what I do as developer relations. A lot of what I do is relate to developers, show them things that I find interesting and cool, and talk about dev shit. I've kind of had impact on the DevRel space. There's a lot of people who are doing YouTube videos that no longer are and instead are working to get people like me to cover their stuff. There's been a lot of change in the DevRel space that I think's been really good overall. Developer relations being a person at a company that doesn't code, that makes crappy blog posts about AI shit is not a good thing. But a developer relations expert at a company whose role is to figure out where developers go to get information, what information is and isn't missing, and to try and plug the gaps and find ways to position the company's product in the right circles with the right DevRels and the right devs in general. That's a good DevRel. Someone like Lee Rob, for example, made this transition well, where previously he was the guy doing content for Vercel, like had a YouTube channel where he covered them multiple times a week, and moved away from that when I started doing well so that he could make content that would help my content and work with people like me directly instead. DevRel has shifted significantly over the years, and a lot of that is because of the influencers like Primogen, like WebDev Cody, like Mickey, like Typecraft, like myself. We've shifted. Oh, Josh Tried Coding is a really good example as well. Yeah, there's a lot of examples of these new developers, Bash Bunny as well, who have changed what developer media looks like. And I think it's fair to say that someone employed in DevRel should probably know who most of those people are. At the very least, if you're a DevRel targeting early to mid-stage companies, trying to get them to adopt different database technologies, you should probably know who Prime and I are, just statistically speaking. Like if it's your job to get developers to pay attention to your thing, and you don't know who developers in that space pay attention to, you're not very good at that job. Similarly, if you're a experienced React developer that on your resume, senior React engineer, you know what React Query is, I question your expertise. The reason we've went down this absurd rabbit hole is a story I want to tell about when I was having this awkward conversation at the Mongo booth. Because this person who's being awkward with me already puts out their hand and says, "Oh, I'm X. Who are you?" And I laugh, assuming it's a joke. Not because I think everyone should know who I am, but just was an awkward interaction. Then I said, "Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, I'm Theo. I'm a dev YouTuber. I talk about a lot of full stack database stuff to early to mid-stage startups. Thought you might know who I was. My bad. What do you do at Mongo?" "Oh, I'm a DevRel and head of media at Mongo." I didn't take this personally. I just laughed, thought it was funny. He's like, "Oh, yeah, it makes sense. The head of media and DevRel at Mongo wouldn't know who I am. Yeah, that checks out. Just thought it was funny." It's like, Mongo doesn't really get what devs need anymore. They're a sales company. That's fine. It is what it is. Apparently, this absolutely crushed the person who I had that awkward experience with. And later on, when I was walking out to go home, An exec at the Mongo booth pulls me over. It's like, hi, can we talk? Sits me down at the corner. Like, they have a giant fucking booth. And like, there's a little table hidden in the corner. And they sit me down with my channel manager and have the most awkward fucking lecture / investigation experience I've ever had at any event like this. Trying to mitigate the likelihood I tell this story, but instead made me feel so incredibly fucking awkward. Like the worst I felt around anyone at any of these companies ever. That I'm dedicating an unreal amount of time in this video to talking about this, because that awkwardness, that level of uncomfortable, the fact that he was trying to both figure out what had happened, but also make me feel bad for it, shows the level of both incompetence and fundamental lack of understanding of the dev space that exists within Mongo. This is a sales enterprise that happens to have a technology at the core of it. It's not a database company. It's a sales enterprise company that just so happens to pretend to be a database and technologies company still. And being that that's what they are, it makes all the sense in the world that the new DevRel media person had no idea who I was. Because, actually, a good analogy from chat, smells like Oracle. If this was an Oracle booth, I would expect the exact same thing. It's still funny to me, but it is what it is. This means that we're not the target's big corps. Absolutely. The thing that was funny here wasn't, oh, they don't recognize me because I'm so famous. It's, they don't recognize the developer ecosystem because they're not selling to developers. They're selling to these giant enterprises. And that's why I made a joke about it. It's like, oh yeah, you guys wouldn't know what developers like, huh? And they took it really personally because that's Mongo. They're more likely to complain that people think they don't understand devs than they are to put in the footwork to understand devs. And I ended up getting cornered by a fucking exec because of this. That's the Mongo experience in a nutshell. But if you're a Fortune 500 that is vibe coding some shit and wants a database that will theoretically scale and not require migrations, you probably already have a contract with Mongo, so you're just adding another line to it. This is actually the thing I think benefits Mongo a lot right now because it is so flexible. It's actually decent for vibe coding. All the problems we see with like the Replit agent where it nukes the table because it can't migrate, that's not going to happen in Mongo. If one of these random vibe coded apps you shit out actually starts getting a lot of traffic, you just go pay Atlas more money. It actually makes sense as a database solution for things that you shouldn't be building in the first place, but are being built. Also, funniest tweet possibly like of the year so far, Sam from Planet Scale, Trump put a tariff on joins. God. This is the difference between like Planet Scale and Mongo. Both are selling to enterprises, but Planet Scale has a deep understanding of the developer ecosystem. Mongo barely knows what developers are. Different worlds, like entirely different worlds. I think it's fair to say that Mongo doesn't really get devs. In fact, Mongo sued the Linux Foundation because they changed the license for MongoDB to be the server-side public license, which means that the built-in Mongo adapters in Linux were no longer legal. They sued them for it. Yes, Mongo is, as far as I know, the only database to sue Linux. Yeah. Thankfully, Microsoft has come out as the decent player in the space, and now DocumentDB from Microsoft is a stable open source project that happens to have a Mongo adapter that works that can now be brought into the Linux Foundation. So yes, Mongo is the only company that is so evil and so fundamentally doesn't understand developers that Microsoft had to come in to help Linux out because of Mongo. Yeah, I think I've made my point. Mongo's weird vibes. AWS, Microsoft, and Google unite behind Linux Foundation DocumentDB database to cut enterprise costs and limit vendor lock-in. This is all because all of these companies are pissed that Mongo went from open source to rug pulling and now basically force you to use Atlas. This is kind of what Redis did where they rug pulled, but Mongo's much more aggressive with it. You basically can't use Mongo in the cloud reliably unless you're using Atlas. Combination of their crazy licensing and the fact that it's really hard to host Mongo properly. Yeah. Document databases are important for AI apps for tasks such as chats, context, and memory. AI apps are all about semi-structured data, and document databases are purpose-built for it, said Kirill, who's the vice president at Microsoft and DocumentDB's primary architect. He's a vice president at Microsoft. But there's no open source standard engine for document databases, like what Postgres is for relational. Yeah. Mongo was supposed to be, but they chose to make more money instead. Clearly it's working. They're fucking printing. But yeah, now they are being competed with AWS, Microsoft, Google, and Linux Foundation. Very similar to what happened with Redis, but even more aggressively. Yeah. And this happened yesterday, right as they announced their revenue. So you can see why this back and forth is happening, because Mongo doesn't care about developers. They care about their bottom line, which is enterprises paying them too much money for hosting JSON blobs. Yeah. Enough about the weird vibes. We need to talk about the benefits of Mongo a little bit more. God, I hate that statement so much. Ugh. I'm suffering. I do kind of see the value of Mongo for weird vibe coding side projects. Ugh, that hurts. I hate saying it. I just personally was building an app using Codex, and it chose to use SQLite and ran into a decent number of problems that resulted in it making a global type that assigned the return type to the API that we were hitting to get the SQLite data. It also had to run a migration and hope that that went right. And if I made changes, it could potentially break things. Mongo could be a good enough solution for those things if it wasn't obnoxious to set up. But if you're already on Atlas, you're already on Atlas. God. So my honest assumption is that the reason this is happening, the reason Mongo is making more money and getting more customers, is that there's more need for these vibe-coded type things. And if you ignore every interesting database change that's happened in the last 5 years, Mongo is seemingly a very good solution for this. There's a whole list of technologies that I think went from useless to quite viable due to AI and vibe coding, like workers on Cloudflare, for example, the world's most fancy switch statement. Cloudflare workers are great if you want to turn a URL into a different URL. They're not good if you want to do something harder like render HTML, because they're not fast. They're really small, low-power isolates on top of V8 in random places around the world. But if you're literally just passing data from one place to another, they're a really good, cost-effective solution. So if your code can be boiled down to a switch statement, Cloudflare workers make a lot of sense. But if you're doing anything more complex, not so much so. Do you know what else is a glorified switch statement? Every single API doing inference. If you are on T3 chat and you are generating a response, we're not running the infra generating the response. We're hitting an API for OpenAI or Claude or anything else. And most of the time, our server is getting those responses. It's kind of just sitting there. It's waiting for the next token to come from OpenAI and then just forwards it straight down to you. It is barely using any compute during this time. As such, traditional serverless platforms, or even traditional servers, didn't make a lot of sense for this workload because the amount of usage and the amount of CPU the computer's using for this is relatively varied and low. Cloudflare workers make a ton of sense for that. And all of a sudden, workers became by far the most cost-effective way to do scalable inference across different providers. Similar happened to Convex, where the idea of having your entire configuration and infrastructure as a folder in your code base went from, oh, that'd be nice, but I don't want to give up the modularity, to, holy shit, I need this right now so AI agents can actually change my code. It's really cool. Mongo, by not having a schema or really much of a reliable system beyond the scaling side, suddenly makes a lot of sense for this too. Mongo very well could be one of the better choices for vibe coding. I know some very smart people that have strong opinions on databases that don't like Mongo but pick it for this. Like a fun one, I don't know if he'll care if I say this, but I'm gonna. Jared Palmer from Vercel, who made Turbo Repo, he was saying that he's surprised he doesn't see way more people using Mongo for their vibe coding apps, because not having to figure out the schema ahead of time and just writing the data, then reading it and erroring if it doesn't match your validator is a lot easier to just get something up and running. I don't disagree. And apparently, they're growing a lot because of that. There are more and more people who are picking Mongo for their use. That said, the much more interesting piece here, 29% year-over-year growth, but they added 2,800 customers. So they had a 5% growth in customers and a 30% growth in revenue. How did revenue grow 6 times more than new customers did? That's a great question. They've not necessarily been transparent about the answer. Let's see if they have it here. Seems like almost all of their revenue is still subscriptions, which means that the subscription costs had to go up because, once again, they only added 5% customers, which means that all of their existing customers are now paying more money. The average customer would have had to have their cost go up by about 20 to 25% for these numbers to happen. which means either they are just ramping up prices, which could be the case, but more likely, a handful of their customers are doing way more input and output on Mongo and on Atlas. So they had to ramp up their subscription tier, and now they're making more money off of those users because some of those users are vibe coders. Yeah, this is my theory, that internally a lot of these companies are letting more people do things to their data pipe, where like the analytics team can now have a vibe coding tool to make new dashboards and collect new data. And now the amount of I/O that a random team that doesn't even have devs on it is doing at various companies that are on Mongo is going up. And that's why I think Mongo is making more money. They are charging their existing users more because a lot of them are probably using it more. And a lot of that's probably because they're using AI to do things that involve generating more data and requesting more data, thereby increasing the amount of usage the Mongo databases that they have provisioned are getting, resulting in more money being spent. Ugh. I still wouldn't use it, but if you want to, I guess I understand. Ugh, what a company. I'm not talking about Mongo anymore. I'm going to go now. Bye. God, I hate that. That little